Let's bring in Trey Gowdy, Fox News contributor and host of the Trey Gowdy podcast. He is also the author of the book, Doesn't Hurt to Ask, Using the Power of Questions to Communicate, Connect, and Persuade. Congressman, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. My first question is actually more from a practical standpoint. How does this work? When the president signs a bill, but then he asks for revisions, something that's already been voted on and he's already signed, what should Americans take from this?
That Congress is broken and those cuts are not going to be effectuated. I mean, I appreciate his perspective, like I did other presidents that sent, but he signed it. And those cuts are not going to be effectuated in the next couple of weeks. So the only issue is whether or not that $600 is going to go up to $2,000. You know, Alicia, government is not really nimble. There are plenty of people that have suffered dramatically this year, and they could use $2,000 or more. And there are some people, even though we've been going through the pandemic, have not been adversely impacted financially. So in a perfect world, we would help the people who really need it, and not necessarily help folks who financially are okay. But that's not the way government works. Politically, I really don't understand what the Republicans are doing. They're having this public spat over $2,000 per person. Meanwhile, they should be focused on what happens in Georgia, because if they lose both the seats in Georgia, there ain't going to be any cuts, and there's going to be a whole lot more spending.
Well, let's talk about the Georgia race there for a second, because that does put the two Republicans on the ticket there in a pretty tight spot, doesn't it?
Well, my advice to anybody in politics now is just promise more. Whatever somebody else is promising, just promise more. Because, I mean, that's kind of where we are as a republic right now. I mean, this limited government conservatism, and people don't subscribe to it. So I would tell David and Kelly, whatever the other side's promising, just promise more. That's populism. That's what we're going through, and that's how you get elected.
Well, let's move on to actually a second topic now, because as you know, there are two incoming Democratic freshmen into the House who just yesterday on a Sunday talk show refused to throw their support behind Nancy Pelosi and her speakership in the next session. Take a listen.
What I'm going to do is make sure that the voices of the people of St. Louis are heard and that we have what we need. And so you'll find out then. You will find out when my vote is tallied, and again, organizing with our community to figure out what's best.
How big of a problem is this really for Speaker Pelosi?
You know, Alicia, this makes me want to call my therapist, because the worst votes I cast, according to Republicans, were for John Boehner and Paul Ryan. I mean, just so your viewers understand, these decisions are made in November. Both sides nominate their person for Speaker, and Nancy Pelosi was nominated by the Democrats. So if someone in that caucus wants to be the Speaker, he or she should have run in November. She's the nominee of the Democrats, and Kevin McCarthy's the nominee of the Republicans. So whoever thinks they're going to band together and prevent her from being Speaker, then her supporters are going to band together and keep whoever you want from becoming Speaker. So it's great theater, it's interesting, but she's going to be reelected. Because even if she doesn't get it on the first ballot, I mean, who's going to get it? Her supporters will band together and say, you know what? We'll make sure you don't get it. And so she's going to get it. It's just a question of how interesting the vote is.
Yeah, people have underestimated her in the past and lived to regret it. How big a problem is this left flank, though, for the incoming president?
It's terrible. I mean, I was listening to Bernie Sanders early on today. I mean, Bernie, you lost. I don't know if you got the memo, but you ran and you lost. And Joe Biden can say he's the most progressive person. He's a lot more progressive than I want him to be, but he ain't nowhere near AOC and the squad and Bernie Sanders. So expectations have been set really high. If they don't win the two seats in Georgia, they're really not going to be able to accomplish much of anything, so there'll be disappointment.
Well, it never slows down. Trey Gowdy, it's good to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. You too. Thank you.